The phone rings at 7:14 on a Wednesday evening, and I already know. I don't know how I know. There's no logic to it. I'm standing at my kitchen counter in Raleigh, with a glass of water I haven't touched yet, looking out at the parking lot below my apartment, watching a woman I don't know try to load a mattress into a car that's 2 sizes too small for it. She has help, a man who's clearly not going to be enough, and a rope that's clearly not going to hold. I'm watching them work and thinking, loosely, about the pitch I have to deliver Thursday morning for a regional bank rebrand that I don't care about and can't afford not to care about. And the phone rings. I look at the screen. Mara. 7 years. 7 years, and I still feel it in the center of my chest when her name appears. Not a jolt, not electricity, more like a key turning. Something that was locked becoming briefly, predictably unlocked. I answer. Nathan. Her voice is warm in the specific way it always is when she wants something and hasn't figured out how to ask for it yet. There's a texture to it, a roundness. I spent the first 3 years we knew each other trying to understand why her voice alone made me feel like I was being chosen. I spent the next four understanding that I wasn't. Hey, I say, is this a bad time? It's never a bad time. That's the problem. That's always been the problem. I have made myself available to Mara Solis at every hour, in every state, through every version of her I've encountered. Happy, wrecked, distracted, distant. In love with someone else, not in love with someone else, uncertain, certain, anywhere in between. I have answered from airport terminals and from other people's weddings, and from the parking lot of a hospital when my father had his second procedure, and I stepped outside because she called, and I didn't want to explain to her why I was where I was and what that meant. I answered then. I answer now. No, I say. Not bad. Outside, the rope breaks. The mattress slides halfway off the car roof, and the man catches it, and they both start laughing. I watch them be easy with each other and feel something I can't name shift quietly in my chest. I have to tell you something, Mara says. Okay. Derek asked me to marry him. The glass of water on the counter. The parking lot. The mattress, back up now, re-roped, the man pressing one hand flat against it while the woman ties the knot. Mara, I say. Last weekend. In Asheville. We were at this place his cousin recommended, and it was really lovely, Nathan. It was exactly the kind of thing I used to say I wanted. Used to say. As if she's grown past wanting things like that. As if she's reporting on a younger version of herself, with mild affection and appropriate distance. That's wonderful, I say. I hear myself say it. I sound like a person who means it. I said yes, she says. Obviously. I know this is. I know we have our thing, and I know it's been. I just wanted you to hear it from me, before you heard it from anyone else. Our thing. 7 years of our thing. 7 years of being the person she called when the other people didn't work out. And when they did work out, and when she needed someone to sit with her in the dark of whatever was happening and not ask for anything in return. 7 years of waiting in a way I never named out loud, because naming it would have forced a conversation she wasn't ready to have, and I was too afraid to push toward. I was 36 days from turning 30 when we met. I am 29 now in the way that counts, in the way that involves having spent most of my 20s oriented towards someone who never once told me to stop. She never told me to stop. She also never told me to start. She existed in the space between those two instructions, and I filled it with everything I had. I'm happy for you, I say. Are you? Yes. A pause. Not a comfortable one. Mara is very good at silences. She knows how to sit in them without filling them, which means the filling is always left to whoever is on the other side. I have spent years filling her silences. I fill this one. He's a good person, I say. From what you've told me. He is. He really is. He doesn't understand me the way you do, but he's solid. He's present. He shows up. I have to be very still for a moment. I am standing in my kitchen, and I have to be very still. He shows up, I say. You know what I mean. I do. I do know what she means. She means that Derek Weston, who she met 14 months ago at a conference in Charlotte, who she described to me as nice, really nice, actually kind of boring, but in a way that feels safe, who she has spent the better part of a year building a life with while I have been, as always, available. Derek Weston shows up in the specific way that matters to Mara, which is to say he is there, physically, in her daily life, in her bed, at her table, in the seat next to her at the movies. He shows up the way I was never invited to show up, because I was the other kind of showing up. The phone at midnight kind. The emergency kind. The kind that doesn't require a drawer in anyone's apartment or a key or a standing plan for Sunday mornings. I was the kind of showing up you do when the person you actually want isn't available. I have known this for approximately 4 of the 7 years I've known Mara Solis. I have known it with the specific clarity you get when you stop hoping for a minute, when you step outside the story you're telling yourself and look at the actual shape of the thing. The shape of it is simple. She likes me. She needs me. She keeps me. She doesn't want me, not in the way that changes the architecture of a life. I have known this, and I have answered the phone anyway, every time, because I am an idiot, and because I love her, and because those two things have never been in conflict for me until right now, standing at my kitchen counter with a glass of water I still haven't touched, listening to her tell me that someone else is going to be the person she comes home to. I want you to be there, she says, at the wedding. When we get to that, you're important to me, Nathan. You know that. Important. I am important to Mara Solis. I am important the way a phone charger is important. Always where you left it, always working, noticed primarily when it's gone. Of course, I say. You're sure you're okay? I'm good, Mara. You sound. I'm good. Another pause. This one I don't fill. Okay, she says softly. Okay. Thank you for being you. For always just being you. We hang up. I set the phone face down on the counter. I pick up the glass of water and drink all of it, and then I stand there looking at the empty glass for a long time. Outside, the car with the mattress is gone. I didn't see them leave. I was somewhere else. The wedding is in September, 9 months later. I wear the suit I bought for Joel's wedding 2 years ago, the charcoal one that still fits, that I got altered so well the tailor said, don't lose weight. I take the 7:45 train from Raleigh to Charlotte because I don't trust myself to drive, and I don't entirely know why. I sit in the window seat and watch the Carolina Piedmont pass in strips of green and ochre and tell myself I'm fine every 20 minutes, which means I'm not. The venue is a converted textile mill in Noda. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the smell of old wood and new catering. It is, I will admit, beautiful. Mara has always had good taste. She has good taste in venues and in clothes and in music and in friends, and in everything except, possibly, in which friendships she has elected to preserve, and at what cost to the people inside them. She is stunning in the dress. Of course she is. She is Mara. She has dark hair that she's put up for today, and she's wearing something that looks simple from 20 feet away and probably cost $4,000. And when she sees me across the room, her face does the thing it always does. It opens. Like I'm good news. Like I'm a relief. Like she is genuinely completely glad I'm here. I smile back. I eat the salmon. I drink 2 glasses of white wine and then switch to water. I talk to people I know only from the edges of Mara's life. People who ask, how do you know the bride? And I say we work together, which is technically true and functionally incomplete. I watch Derek Weston dance with his mother and I think, he's a decent man. Broad-shouldered, calm-faced, the kind of man who probably coaches Little League and means it. He loves her. I can see it in how he watches the room for her without seeming to, how his body tracks her even when he's looking somewhere else. He loves her and she chose him, and that is, in the cleanest possible reading of events, a good outcome. She chose someone who loves her. She chose him instead of the person who loved her longer. But she chose someone who loves her. I leave before the last song. I tell the friend I've been sitting with that I have an early morning. He nods and doesn't push. I get my jacket from the coat check and walk out into the September air, which is cool and clear the way September in North Carolina gets if you're lucky. And I call a car because the trains have stopped running and I should not drive. The driver is a man named Henry who asks me once how my night is going, and then when I say good, thanks, reads the room perfectly and doesn't say another word. I am grateful for Henry in a way that is disproportionate to the situation. Somewhere on in negative 85, about 20 minutes into the drive, my phone lights up. Mara, thank you for being here tonight. It meant everything. I put the phone face down on the seat. I look out the window at the highway, at the dark, at the lights of other cars moving in the opposite direction. I think this is the last time. Whatever this has been for 7 years, this particular, sustained, bottomless waiting, this is the last night of it. I am going to go home, and I am going to sleep, and I am going to wake up tomorrow and be someone different. Someone who doesn't leave his phone face up on the counter. Someone who doesn't answer on the second ring. Someone who takes the 7 years I spent waiting and turns them into something that belongs to him. I think this clearly. I believe it. I mean it with every calm, exhausted cell in my body. I don't get the chance to try. Henry takes the Glenwood exit because the interstate is backed up. He goes north on Six Forks, which is quiet at this hour, and we are 3 blocks from my apartment when the truck runs the light. I see it from the side window, headlights, the sound of something very large moving very fast, the specific sensation of time doing what it does in those moments, which is not slow down, exactly, but clarify. Everything becomes very precise. The texture of the seat under my hand. The fact that I never texted Mara back. The color of the light in the intersection, green on our side, very definitely green, and the truck is not stopping, and Henry says, "Oh God," and I wake up. It is a Tuesday morning. The light through the curtains is the particular thin gold of early autumn in Raleigh. The alarm on my phone hasn't gone off yet, which means it's before 7:00. I am in my apartment, the right apartment, the one I've had for 3 years, except that I am aware, in the first few seconds of consciousness, that this is not the morning after Mara's wedding. This is a different morning. I lie very still. The ceiling is the same ceiling. The water stain near the smoke detector that the landlord said he'd fix. The sound of the HVAC cycling on. Outside, a dog barking at something it probably shouldn't be awake for yet. I reach for my phone. Tuesday, September 14th. 7 years ago. Tomorrow night is the agency kickoff event for Harmon Creative, the mid-sized firm I've just been hired to join. I will walk into a converted warehouse space in the warehouse district with a drink ticket and a business card I just had made, and a feeling of being approximately the right size for where I am in my life. I will talk to several people I will come to know well, and several I will forget by morning, and one I will not forget. I know this because I have lived it. I set the phone down on the mattress. I put my hands over my face. I breathe. Let me tell you what 7 years looks like when you compress it. When you compress 7 years of loving someone who doesn't love you back, not in the way that counts, not in the way that builds anything, what you get is not a tragedy. That's the thing no one tells you. What you get is a collection of ordinary days that each, individually, seemed completely fine. Seemed, individually, like things that just happen when you care about someone. A phone call here. A long conversation there. A canceled plan that she apologizes for, and you say, no, really, it's fine, and it is fine, individually. Each instance is fine. It is only when you add them up that you see what they were. I have added them up. I have the full sum now, in this bed, on this Tuesday morning in the past, with everything still ahead of me and everything already behind me at the same time. Here is what the 7 years were. She called me 43 times in the first year. Not texts, calls. The kind that meant she wanted to hear a voice. I know this because I counted, once in year 4, when I was in one of those clear-eyed stretches you get sometimes. And I went back through my phone logs out of something that was not quite masochism and not quite archaeology. 43 calls. I called her 9 times. She answered 7. In year 2, she dated a man named Riordan, who was from Atlanta and wore the kind of clothes that suggested he'd thought about them. And she called me on 3 separate occasions from the bathroom of places they were dining at together, because she was just checking in. I thought at the time that this meant something. I understand now that it meant she was bored and I was available, and those 2 facts were sufficient. In year 3, she came to visit me in Raleigh for a weekend. She'd moved to Charlotte by then, and we walked through the farmer's market on Saturday morning, and made dinner at my apartment on Saturday night, and watched a movie we both fell asleep during. And in the morning, I made coffee, and she sat at my counter and told me I was the person she felt most like herself with, and I felt something so large that I didn't know what to do with it, so I said, "You want eggs?" And she laughed and said, "Yeah," and I made eggs, and nothing happened. And she went back to Charlotte on Sunday afternoon. She told me I was the person she felt most like herself with. That sentence kept me going for 18 months. In year 4, she dated someone she called definitely not serious for 8 months before it ended badly. And in year 5, she dated someone she called maybe serious for 5 months before that ended worse. And each time she called me and I was there. I was always there. I was so reliably, comprehensively there that being there had become its own kind of purpose. I had organized a significant portion of my emotional life around being the person Mara Solis could count on. And I had done this while telling myself, while sincerely believing, that I was simply a good friend. I was not simply a good friend. You know that. I know that. We have known it for long enough now that pretending otherwise would be insulting to both of us. In year 6, she came to my father's retirement party because I invited her, and she came because she's the kind of person who shows up to things she's invited to. And she charmed my parents in the specific way she has of making everyone feel like they are exactly who she hoped would be there. And on the drive back to her hotel, she fell asleep in the passenger seat, and I drove with one hand on the wheel and watched the highway and felt something so domestically, painfully ordinary that I had to look away from it. My body was telling me, this is what you want. This is what I want. And in year 7, she met Derek. I know the shape of the next 14 months. I lived them. I know the 3 conversations where I could hear in her voice that it was getting serious. I know the night she called at 11 p.m. to tell me she thought she might be falling for him, her voice unsure in a way it rarely was, looking for something from me that I didn't understand how to give, because she was asking me to be happy for her, and I was, in fact, trying to figure out how to be happy for her and also keep breathing. I know the wedding. I've been to it. I know the drive home. I know what happens on a negative 85 at 11:47 on a Saturday night in September. I lie in this bed with that knowledge the way you hold something that's very hot, carefully at a distance, aware that it will burn you if you get too close to it, and also that it is the realest thing in the room. And I think, what do I do with this? Not in a grand sense. Not in the sense of what do I do with the fact that I have somehow been returned to a point 7 years before the accident, which is a question so large I am going to set it down and not pick it up for a while. I mean, what do I do with tomorrow night? With the agency kickoff? With the moment I will walk into a warehouse space in the warehouse district and see across the room a woman with dark hair who will look up at exactly the right moment and smile at exactly the right angle and say something that will make me feel, for the first time in years, like someone is genuinely curious about what I'm going to say next. What do I do with knowing what that smile costs? I pick up my phone again. 7:02 a.m. The alarm doesn't go off for another 28 minutes. Outside, the dog has stopped barking. I think about the man I was the morning after the wedding, the man on the train to Charlotte in the charcoal suit, telling himself this is the last time, the man who meant it, the man who didn't get the chance. I have the chance now. I want to be precise about something because it matters. I am not going to this second life angry. Anger would be easier, probably. Anger is clean. Anger has a direction and a force and a satisfying amount of heat. If I were angry at Mara Solis, I would know exactly what to do. Avoid her, dismiss her, be coldly successful in ways that require her to witness it. That is the shape of an anger story. This is not an anger story. I am not angry at Mara. I have thought about this in the 22 minutes I've been lying here, and I keep arriving at the same answer. She never lied to me. She never promised me anything she didn't deliver. She kept me in her life because I was good in her life, because I made things easier and she liked me. And those are not nothing. Those are actually real things, and she is not a villain for having them. She is a person who got exactly what she asked for because I gave it to her freely, repeatedly, without ever once making the cost legible to either of us. What I am is, I don't have the right word. Awake, maybe. The way you get after a fever breaks. Not angry. Not even sad, exactly. Clear. I am clear about what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the kickoff tomorrow night, and I am going to be myself. The self that exists independent of Mara Solis, which is, it turns out, a fairly interesting person. And I am going to be courteous and warm and professionally present, and when she smiles at me across the room, I am going to smile back and move on. I am going to move on. Not because I'm angry. Because I have already paid the price of the alternative in full, and I know what it bought, and I am not purchasing it again. The agency kickoff is at a place called The Mill on Fayetteville Street, which is not, in the way of Raleigh naming conventions, actually a mill. It is a large open event space with exposed ceiling ducts and a bar along one wall and a light installation that pulses very slowly between amber and gold, which gives the room the feeling of being inside something warm and just slightly unreal. I arrive at 7:15. I have a drink in my hand, sparkling water with lime, because I have decided to be someone who can stand in a room and not need the thing to hold. And I know, standing at the edge of the main space, that she is already here. I look for her the way you look for a fire exit when you check into a hotel. Not anxiously. Just, I like to know where it is. She's near the bar. Dark hair loose tonight, the way she wears it when she's feeling easy about something. She's talking to a woman I don't recognize in this first iteration of events, someone from the strategy side of the agency. She's laughing at something. The laugh is the one I know, genuine, a little surprised, like she can't quite believe how much she's enjoying herself. I watch her for approximately 3 seconds. Then I turn and introduce myself to the man on my left, who turns out to be Joel Reyes, senior copywriter, who will become my best friend, who is in this moment holding a beer and looking around the room with the specific expression of someone who has been to enough of these events to know they're mostly about the hour after the official part ends. Nathan Calloway, I say. Creative director. Today's my first day. Joel Reyes, he shakes my hand. 3rd year. Let me tell you who to actually talk to. He does. It takes 45 minutes, and I am, by the end of it, better oriented to Harmon Creative than I was at the end of my first actual week in the first version of this life. Joel is good at reading organizations. He knows the structures beneath the org chart. He knows whose opinion moves things, and whose approval is nominal, and whose bad day will become everyone's problem by Thursday. I am listening to him explain the dynamics of the agency's biggest client relationship when I hear her voice behind me. Sorry, do you know where they put the sparkling water? I turn. Mara Solis. Up close in this light. The dark hair, the open face. She's looking at me with an expression that is politely curious and nothing else. She doesn't know me yet in this version of events. I am a stranger to her, a stranger in a room full of new colleagues. Bar on the left, I say. They've got a whole setup behind the counter. Ask for Pellegrino. They've been giving out the house stuff by default. Thank you. A smile. The real one, not the performed one. She reserves the real one for moments when she's caught off guard. I'm Mara. Just started today. Nathan. I gesture toward Joel. This is Joel. He's been here 3 years and he already told me more than HR did. Joel extends his hand. That's because HR's job is to protect the company. My job is to make sure creative doesn't lose anyone good in the first month. She laughs. The genuine one again. And I stand there and I smile and I am warm and completely present. And then, when the natural break comes, when Joel asks her something about where she's coming from professionally, I say, "Excuse me a second," and I turn and walk toward the other end of the room. I do not look back. I will think about that later, the not looking back, and understand that it is the hardest thing I have done in either of my lives. The difference between the first time I lived this year and the second time is not, as I expected, about Mara. I expected it to be about Mara. I expected the second life to feel like navigating around a gravitational field, always tracking the pull, always correcting course. I expected to spend every social event at Harmon Creative quietly managing the distance between us, monitoring it, maintaining it with the vigilance of someone who knows what happens when they let it close. But that's not what happens. What happens is the work. I have been a creative director for long enough in my first life to know that I am good at it. I know the instincts I trust and the ones I don't. I know which clients need to feel heard before they're ready to be led, and which ones will respect you more if you walk into the room already decided. I know the specific combination of confidence and curiosity that makes a team want to follow you. And I know how to do the thing I've always been bad at, which is saying no early enough that no still has value. In my first life, I was good at my job. In my second life, I am better because I am not giving half of my attention to a phone that may or may not ring. The work comes fast and it comes clean. By the end of the first month, Marcus, the executive creative director at Harmon, has pulled me into a pitch for a regional healthcare system, something that would normally go to a director with 5 more years than I have, which is the kind of opportunity that announces itself once and doesn't return. I say yes before he finishes asking. Joel watches this happen. He watches it with the affectionate skepticism of someone who has seen enough talented people squander themselves in their first year to know it's not guaranteed. You're different from most new creative directors, he says one Thursday over lunch at the place on Glenwood we've started going to more or less weekly. How so? Usually there's an adjustment period. First few months, you're figuring out the terrain, not quite putting your full weight down. You came in putting your full weight down. I consider how to answer this. I knew some things before I started, I say, which is true in a way that Joel cannot possibly parse. About the industry, about what matters and what doesn't. He looks at me for a moment. Joel has a way of looking at you that is not invasive. He's not trying to get inside anything, but is completely attentive, like he's listening to something underneath what you're saying. The healthcare pitch, he says. You want to talk through the approach? Yeah, but let me ask you something first. Sure. What do you think the client actually needs? Not what they asked for. What they need. He sets down his sandwich, and we're off. The thing about Mara in this version of events is that she's good at her job too. I know this, of course. I've seen it. But in the first version of my time at Harmon, I was so busy watching her for other reasons that I didn't fully attend to it. Now I do. She's a strategist, ostensibly, but what she's actually gifted at is listening. She hears things in client conversations that other people miss, the hesitations and redirects and emphasis shifts that tell you what someone actually cares about, as opposed to what they think they're supposed to care about. She's very good at translating that into briefs. The creative teams she works with consistently deliver better work because she gives them something real to work with. I noticed this in meetings. In the first version of my life, I noticed her in meetings. This is a different kind of noticing. It is the noticing you do when you have separated someone's presence from your need of them. And what you find underneath is an actual, distinct human being who is good at specific things. She is also, I observe, very good at people. She remembers names and personal details. She asks follow-up questions. She has a way of making whoever she's talking to feel like the room got slightly more interesting when they walked in. This is the quality that made me feel once like I was being chosen. I understand it now as a skill she applies broadly and unconsciously, the way some people make eye contact and some people don't. I do not let her apply it to me. Not unkindly, not with any drama or visible effort. I am simply not available in the way that matters. The emotional interior is closed, or at least not lit from within. When we talk in meetings, I am collegial and direct and engaged with the work and nothing else. When we end up at the same table at agency events, I am pleasant and sometimes funny, and I move on when the conversation reaches its natural end. In the first version of this life, I would have extended those conversations. I would have found the thread that kept them going, the question that opened another room. I was very good at finding those threads with Mara. I had 7 years of practice. Now I let the conversation close. The first time she notices, really notices, not just registers, is about 6 weeks in. We're in the kitchen at the office, third floor, the one with the good coffee. She's waiting for the pour over to finish, and I'm getting water, and she says, in the way of someone who has been working up to something casual, do you have plans this weekend? A group of us are doing the Eno River Trail Saturday morning. Joel said he might come. Can't this weekend, I say, but thanks. Oh, a pause. The pour over drips. Another time. Sure. I take my water and go back to my desk. I sit down and pull up the healthcare pitch deck, and I don't think about the expression on her face, which was not hurt. We don't have the history yet for it to be hurt, but was something like surprised. Like she had expected a different outcome. She had. She would have gotten it in the first version. My father calls on a Sunday in October to tell me the results of his latest cardiology appointment are good. This is news I received in my first life, with relief and a mental note to call more often that I did not follow through on. This time I drive to Greensboro the following Saturday and take my parents to dinner, and afterward we sit on their porch, and my father and I talk for an hour about things that have nothing to do with medicine or work. About the year he spent in the service, about the town he grew up in, about a camping trip we took when I was 7 that I had forgotten until he described it, and then remembered completely. I drive back to Raleigh late. The sky is clear and the highway is empty in that specific way it gets at midnight on a weekend. Just me and the truckers, and someone in a blue sedan, doing 90 like they have somewhere to be. I think about my father's hands on the table at dinner, which are the hands I am slowly growing into. Same knuckles, same tendency to reach for things with the right hand, even when the left is closer. And I think about the year I spend after the first version of this life's kickoff event, not calling my parents enough, not going to Greensboro enough, being too occupied with the particular weather of my own interior to take the hour's drive north and sit with people who would have been glad to have me. I make a note, not literally. The kind of note you make in the body, below the level of conscious decision, that shows up later as behavior. Joel figures something out about me by November. We're at the bar we've started going to on Wednesdays, not a regular commitment, just a thing that's been happening every week for 2 months, which means it's a regular commitment. And we've been talking about the healthcare pitch, which has gone well. And we're into the second round, and he says, can I ask you something direct? Yeah. Mara. I look at him. She asked about you, Joel says. Not in a weird way. Just, she mentioned that she can't quite get a read on you. Said you're warm in meetings and friendly in the office, and then somehow not quite reachable. She said that? I'm paraphrasing. She said something like he's nice, but I can't tell if he actually likes anyone here, or if he's just good at seeming like he does. I consider this. And you're bringing it to me because I'm curious. He turns his beer glass on the coaster. I've worked here 3 years, and I have decent radar for people. You're not just being professional. You're keeping something at a specific distance. And I'm not saying it's Mara specifically, but it's not Mara specifically. Okay, I stop. I look at the bar, at the row of bottles, at nothing in particular. I spent a long time in a situation that cost me more than I understood while I was in it. I'm aware of the early patterns now. So I don't let them start. Joel is quiet for a moment. What kind of situation? The kind where you care a lot about someone who doesn't have the same amount to give back. And you convince yourself it's okay because you're patient and you believe things will change. And every time you're about to walk away, they do something that makes you stay. And then one day you add up all the things you gave and you realize you built them a life and lived on the outside of it. Joel turns the beer glass again. Someone specific, he says. Doesn't matter, but you're watching for the signs. I'm watching for the signs. He nods. He's quiet for a bit. Then, Mara's not a bad person. I know. She's genuinely good. She cares about people. I know that too. But you still. She reminds me of someone, I say. Same quality. The warmth that's real but also strategic isn't the right word. Habitual. She's warm the way some people breathe. It doesn't mean anything in particular about you specifically. It's just how she moves through the world. Joel looks at me with the attentive look. How do you know that about someone you've known for 2 months? I'm perceptive, I say. He laughs. It's a good laugh, genuine. Fair enough, he says. Fair enough. We order another round. The bar is warm and the conversation moves on to other things. Outside, Fayetteville Street is doing what it does on a Wednesday night. Quiet enough to hear the stoplight cycle, busy enough to feel like a city. I am 30 in 6 weeks. In the first version of this life, I turned 30 and went to a dinner Mara organized, because she was the kind of person who organized birthdays, and I felt, eating the cake she'd had made with my name on it, simultaneously grateful and devastated, which was a very standard emotional condition for me in that period. In this version, I am going to Greensboro for my birthday. My mother is making the lasagna I stopped asking for sometime in my mid-20s, because I thought it was childish to request specific foods from your parents' cooking. I am going to sit at my parents' kitchen table and eat the lasagna and be 30 and be glad about it. That is all I need from that day. By February, I can see it clearly. It is not a plan on Mara's part. I want to be precise about that. She is not doing anything that could fairly be called pursuit. She is doing what she has always done. She is moving toward warmth, the way living things do. It is simply that, in this version of events, I am not as warm toward her as I was in the first version, which means the relative warmth of everything else in her vicinity has shifted, which means she is not moving away from me specifically so much as, and this is the uncomfortable observation, she is noticing the absence of what she expected. She expected me to be easy. Most people are easy for Mara. She has the quality, as I noted, of making people feel like they've been chosen, which means they try to be worthy of that choosing, which means they give her what she needs without her having to ask. It is a comfortable dynamic for her, because she has moved through it her entire adult life without identifying it as a dynamic. It is just how things work. People want to be around her. People are accommodating. People make space. I make space in meetings. I do not make space the other way. In February, she starts showing up at the third floor kitchen at approximately the time I get coffee, which is 9:15 a.m. This is not in itself significant. The third floor kitchen has the best coffee, and 9:15 is a reasonable time. But it happens Tuesday and Thursday and the following Monday and then Wednesday. And by the third week of February, it has happened 11 times, and I have on 10 of those occasions had a brief and pleasant conversation about work, and then taken my coffee back to my desk. On the 11th occasion, she says, "Can I ask you something?" Sure. Do I do something that bothers you? I look at her. She is holding her mug with both hands, which she does when she's slightly nervous. I know this about her. I know more things about her than she knows I know, which is, all things considered, a deeply strange position to occupy. No, I say honestly, because sometimes I get the feeling that you're. She stops, recalibrates. I'm good at reading rooms. And sometimes in your room, I get the feeling that I don't know. Edit it out. I take a moment with this. She is not wrong. She has been edited out, not from the room, but from the part of the room I leave unguarded. And she is perceptive enough to feel the presence of an absence, which is the most Mara thing she has ever done, in either version of her. You're not edited out, I say. I like working with you. I think you're good at your job. But, no but. She looks at me with a kind of careful attention I haven't received from her before. In the first version, I was the one who looked at her that way. This is new. This is her looking at me the way I used to look at her, which is to say, trying to find the door. Okay, she says. Okay, I say. I take my coffee. The healthcare pitch closes in March. $32 million in annual billings, the biggest account Harmon has signed in 4 years. Marcus takes the creative team to dinner at the kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't have prices, and I sit at the head of the table, or near it. Marcus is at the head, technically, but the night is clearly organized around me, and I feel for the first time in either version of my life that I am operating at my actual capacity, not compensating, not performing, not using half my cognitive bandwidth to track the temperature of someone else's regard for me. This is what I was supposed to be, underneath everything. Joel makes a toast. He's good at toasts, specific and funny, no grandstanding. He talks about the pitch process and the 3 moments where it could have gone the other way and how I made the call each time. And around the table, people are laughing and nodding, and I am looking at my glass and thinking about the version of me that spent the years he should have been building this, pursuing something that was never going to turn into what he needed. What a waste. Not angry. Just. Clear. What a clean, specific, preventable waste. Mara brings me a coffee the morning after the win. Just places it on my desk while I'm in a call, taps the edge of the desk to get my attention and sets it down, and I nod, and she gives me a small smile and leaves. When I look down, it's from the place around the corner, not the office machine. She paid for it. She knew my order. I have been ordering the same thing for 3 months. I sit with this for a moment after my call ends. The coffee is still hot. It's exactly right. She noticed what I ordered, and she went around the corner and got it for me after the biggest win of my professional life. And the gesture is, it's a good gesture. It is thoughtful and well-timed, and she did it without any expectation of return, which is possibly the first truly generous thing she has ever done in my direction. I drink the coffee. I write her a brief message through the agency chat. Thank you for the coffee. Didn't have to do that. She responds, yes, I did. You earned it. I close the chat. Joel asks me in April if I'm seeing anyone. No, I say. Are you open to it? I think about this. Yeah, I think so. There's someone I've been meaning to introduce you to. Claire Aldridge. She does brand strategy at Parallel, the agency in the South Building. We went to grad school together. She's the kind of person I think you'd actually be interested in talking to. Meaning, meaning she'll disagree with you, directly. And she'll be right about half the time, which means you'll have to figure out which half. I smile. That's your pitch? You're not going to be won over by she's great and pretty, are you? Not especially. No. You're going to need to be interested. She'll interest you. I'm confident about this. I say sure. I mean it. Spring in Raleigh is the most persuasive argument for living here. The dogwood on the street outside my apartment blooms for about 2 weeks in April, and every year I forget how much I like it until it happens. And then I spend the 2 weeks noticing it carefully, trying to take in enough to hold through the winter. There's a coffee shop on the corner that puts tables outside when it blooms, and I have taken to working there on weekend mornings with a book or a sketch pad, because sometimes the best thing for creative work is a surface that is not a screen. I am there on a Saturday morning in late April when Mara walks past. She sees me. She slows. The moment has that quality of suburban coincidence that manages to feel both arbitrary and arranged. Neither of us planned it, but here we are, and there's a beat where we each decide what to do with it. She stops. Hi, she says. Hey. She looks at the empty chair across from me. Are you waiting for someone? No. She sits down. Not asking, just sitting, in the way of someone who is used to being welcome. She orders a cortado from the server who comes by and looks around at the blooming street and says, this city has its moments. It does. I keep meaning to get out and actually see it on weekends. I spend too much time in my apartment on Saturdays. What do you do instead? She thinks about it. Phone calls. Errands. The kind of Saturday where you do a lot, and at the end you can't remember what you did. Yeah. The cortado arrives. She wraps both hands around it. I've been thinking, she says, about what you said in February. About not editing people out. I said I wasn't editing you out. Right. But the way you said it made me think about whether I do it. Edit people out. She looks at the table. I think I might. I think I keep people at a specific. I give them access to some things and not others. And I don't really think about it consciously. It's just kind of my default. I look at her. I've been trying to be more conscious of it, she says. Deliberately, she glances up. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I know why she's telling me this. She's telling me this because she's figured out that I have a door she hasn't found yet, and this is an attempt. Instinctive, not calculated, to find it by opening something of her own first. It is the classic Mara move, deployed now because she has run out of the easier ones. I know it the way I know her coffee order, which is to say, I know it because I paid attention to her for longer than anyone should pay attention to someone who is not paying attention back. It's worth thinking about, I say. The default distance thing. Yeah, she drinks her cortado. Do you do you feel like you know me? From working together. I feel like I know what you're good at. That's not what I asked. I know. I look at the dogwood across the street. I think you're private in a way that doesn't look like privacy. You seem very open. You're actually quite guarded. A long pause. Huh, she says. Not a criticism. I know. It's just. You're the first person who said that to me who I believe actually means it as an observation rather than a complaint. Why would it be a complaint? Because usually when people say it, they mean you won't let me in and they're frustrated about it. I'm not frustrated about it. She looks at me. The look is different from the professional look, from the warm greeting look, from the slightly unsure look she had in the kitchen in February. This one is careful, genuinely trying to understand something. Are you not interested, she says, in knowing me, outside of work? I take a moment with this, not for dramatic effect, because the question deserves a real answer, and the real answer is complicated in a way that I am not going to share with her. I'm interested in people who are interested in being known, I say finally, fully, not just the parts they're comfortable with. She is quiet. I don't know if that's you, I say. I don't mean that as a judgment. I genuinely don't know. She looks at me for another moment. Then she looks away at the street, at the blooming tree. That's a fair thing to say, she says quietly. We sit for a while. The Saturday moves around us, a couple with a stroller, a man walking a dog that's interested in everything. The dogwood does what dogwood does in late April, which is mostly just be there, pink and brief, and somehow exactly enough. I should go, she says eventually. Yeah. She stands, fishes her wallet out. I shake my head and she hesitates and then nods. Thank you for the cortado. Good luck with the Saturdays. She smiles. The real one. The caught off guard one. Then she leaves. I watch her go, and I feel nothing that needs emergency attention. A small, clean ache. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. I open my sketch pad and go back to work. May. I meet Claire Aldridge on a Thursday evening at a place in the warehouse district that Joel has picked because it has, he explains, very good natural light and also makes a Negroni that he considers definitive. The natural light is gone by 7 p.m., but the Negroni point holds up. She is sitting at the bar when I arrive, talking to the bartender about something that's making both of them laugh. She's wearing a gray blazer over a white shirt, dark jeans, the kind of outfit that looks easy and took maybe 15 minutes and 3 decisions. She sees me, and the conversation with the bartender ends naturally, and she turns and looks at me with an expression that I recognize, after a moment's processing, as honest assessment. Not unkind, just unperformed. You're Nathan, she says. Claire. We shake hands. She has a direct handshake, not performing firmness, just present. Joel told me you're hard to read, she says. Joel told me you'd disagree with me. How often is he right? About half the time, I say. She smiles. Let's find out. The dinner is 3 hours. I don't register that it's been 3 hours until we're walking out, and I check my phone, and it's after 10. 3 hours during which we have talked about brand strategy and the difference between identity and reputation, about the specific creative failure mode of agencies that mistake prettiness for meaning, about a project she worked on 3 years ago that went wrong in an interesting way and what she learned from it. We have disagreed twice, substantially, about things that are actually worth disagreeing about, and each time she has pushed back without hedging, and I have responded in kind, and we have arrived at a third position that is better than either starting point. She is, I think, walking down Fayetteville Street at 10:15 on a Thursday night. This is the actual thought I have, which is perhaps the clearest signal of anything, the kind of person you can build something with. Not because she's easy, because she isn't. I have a meeting at 8, she says, but I'm interested in continuing this. The disagreements or the dinner? Both. Saturday. Saturday works. We see each other 4 Saturdays in a row, and then she says, one Sunday morning when I've made coffee and she's sitting at my counter reading something on her phone, without looking up. I'm not interested in casual. I know, I say. She looks up. You're sure about that? Because some people say they know, and then they. I'm sure, I say. I've done the other thing. I know what it costs. She looks at me for a moment. Then she goes back to her phone. Good, she says. Then we're on the same page. I pour her coffee. She reaches for it without looking up, and her hand finds the mug on the first try, which is not nothing. At Harmon in June, Mara finds out about Claire. I don't tell her. Joel does, not out of malice, out of the reasonable assumption that it's not a secret. It isn't a secret. I simply haven't mentioned it. She comes to my office, knocks on the open door. I'm in the middle of something, and I hold up one finger, and she waits. No impatience, no shifting, just waiting. And after 2 minutes, I close the laptop and look at her. I heard you're seeing someone, she says. Yeah, from another agency. Brand strategy at Parallel. She nods. Her hands are not around a mug. She's not holding anything. She looks, I think, slightly at a loss for what to do with them. That's good, she says. That's good. I'm glad. Thank you. A pause. The open door. The office behind her. People moving through it at end of day. The sound of the printer and someone's phone and the distant conversation from the kitchen. I keep thinking about what you said, she says. About people who want to be fully known. Yeah, I've been trying to figure out if I'm one of them. I don't say anything. I'm not sure I am, she says. Yet. But I've been thinking about it. She looks at me. Is that? Never mind. That's not relevant to anything. It's relevant to you. Right. Yes, she gives me a small, complicated smile. I'll let you get home. Good night, Mara. Good night. She goes. I sit at my desk for a moment, looking at the doorway she passed through, and I feel the thing that I knew was coming and couldn't quite prepare for. Not triumph. Nothing as clean as triumph. Something more like watching a road close behind you. Not a door slamming, just the distance growing in the rear view, the town getting smaller, and you are the one driving, and you are driving in the right direction, and the town will always be exactly that size from here on. I pack my bag. I text Claire, done for the day. Pick you up at 7. She responds, bring the wine. I'll cook. I drive east. The city moves past the windows. I am exactly where I am in the only life I have now, which is this one. There is a version of this story that spends a long time on Claire and how different she is. How direct. How unflinching. How she would sooner have an uncomfortable conversation at 10 p.m. than carry something unspoken through a week. How the first time I was quieter than usual at dinner, she asked what happened today, rather than waiting for me to volunteer it. How the first time I told her something about the first version of my life, not the impossible parts, just the emotional shape of it. She listened without interpreting, and said that sounds exhausting in a way that was neither dramatic nor dismissive. I could spend a long time on all of this. But here is what I actually want to say about Claire, which is this. She is not the reward. This is something I had to understand slowly, because the story I knew how to tell about the second life was a story with a reward, a lesson learned and an upgrade earned and a better person arriving who validated the change I'd made. That's the story I expected to be living. Claire is not the reward. Claire is a person. She is specific and real and flawed in ways I am learning the shape of, and she drives me slightly insane when she reorganizes things in my apartment without asking. And she is better at maintaining friendships than I am and worse at getting enough sleep. And she cries at things she doesn't expect to cry at, and handles things she expects to break her with a composure that surprises both of us. She is a person. What I mean when I say this is, she was not placed in my path as payment for doing something right. She was there. Joel knew her. I met her. We chose each other. The choosing is ongoing. What changed, because of the first life, is not that I found the right person. It is that I became capable of recognizing and staying with a person. Those are different things. The first is luck and coincidence. The second is a kind of work that most people don't understand they need to do until they've failed at it once, in the way that costs. The year I turned 31, the agency offers me a partnership track. Marcus calls me into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus, who is 62 and has the specific authority of someone who has survived enough market cycles to stop performing his expertise. And he slides a folder across the desk and says, I want you to read this week and come back to me next Friday with questions. The folder has the word partnership on a tab in the corner. Thank you, I say. Don't thank me yet. There are conditions and a timeline, and some things in there that are going to require you to think about what you want the next decade of your professional life to look like. I know what I want, I say, but I'll read it carefully. He looks at me with the look he has, which is not warm exactly, but is respectful, which from Marcus Greer is worth more. Yes, he says, I believe you do. Joel and I are at our Wednesday bar in December, the night before the agency holiday party, which is the social event at Harmon that most closely resembles a genuine gathering of people who like each other. Joel is telling me about a personal situation, a relationship he's been in for 6 months that has arrived at the part where decisions need to be made. He is thoughtful about it in the way Joel is thoughtful about everything, with full attention and no self-pity. The thing is, he says, I knew by month 2, that it was the kind of thing that required deciding. But I kept not deciding because not deciding was more comfortable. And now not deciding is less comfortable than deciding. So he lifts his glass. We'll see. What are you going to do? Tell her I'm in. Fully. Which is what I should have done in month 2. He pauses. Does it ever feel strange to you? How much time you can lose to not deciding? I think about my first life. About 7 years of the same. Yeah, I say. It feels strange. He nods. But here you are. Here I am. At the holiday party, Mara introduces me to a man named Derek Weston. He is broad-shouldered, calm-faced, the kind of man who coaches Little League and means it. He has his hand on the small of her back in the way of someone who has been given permission to put his hand there and doesn't take it for granted. He looks at her when she's talking to other people, which is the surest sign. Nathan's our creative director, Mara says. He ran the healthcare pitch. Derek extends his hand. Firm handshake. That's a serious account. Congratulations. Thank you. How do you two know each other? Conference in Charlotte, Mara says. About a year ago. We were both complaining about the same panel, Derek says, and she laughs. The real one. And he catches it happening with a small, private expression that is not for anyone but him. Good to meet you, I say, and I mean it without irony, which is a new experience. I mean it because he seems like a decent man, and she seems genuinely at ease, which is, I look at it carefully, and the word I arrive at is right. It seems right. I move on. I find Claire, who is talking to Joel's girlfriend about something that's making them both laugh, and I put my hand on her back, lightly, the way you do when you're arriving rather than claiming, and she leans slightly into it without looking away from the conversation, which is exactly the gesture I needed from exactly the right person. The following spring, I proposed to Claire on a Saturday morning in the farmer's market on Morgan Street. Not as a public gesture. I am not the public gesture type, and she would be mortified by it, which is one of the things I love about her. I do it the way things actually happen in lives rather than in stories about lives. We're at the cheese stand, and she's asking about an aged cheddar, and I'm holding both our coffees, and I look at her, the way she tilts her head when she's considering something, the way she holds her free hand out to take the sample, and I just know. The way you know when you're not calculating the knowing. Hey, I say. She turns. Will you marry me? A pause. The farmer's market moving around us. Someone calling a price somewhere. The sound of a child who has decided it's time to leave. She looks at me for a long moment, and her expression does the thing it does when something has found her before she was fully ready for it. Not startled, just arrived. She takes her coffee back from me so I have a free hand, and she says quietly, yes, obviously. I hold both our coffees while she calls her mother from behind the cheese stand. Mara hears about the engagement from someone at work. I don't know who. The timing is such that she clearly heard before I got back to the office on Monday, because when I arrived, there's a card on my desk, physical card, the kind you buy in an actual store, that says, Congratulations, Nathan. You deserve this. M. The card is in an envelope that she sealed. I can tell because the envelope has a slight crinkle along the seal that means she held it closed while the glue set. She heard on the weekend. She went out and bought a card. She came in early and put it on my desk. I sit with the card for a moment. Then I write her a message through the agency chat. Thank you, Mara. That was thoughtful. She responds, I mean it. I know she means it. That's the thing I've learned. In this version, she does mean the things she says to me. She has always meant them. The problem was never that she said things she didn't mean. The problem was what she didn't say, which was different. 2 weeks before the wedding, my phone rings at 8:30 on a Tuesday evening. I am at my kitchen counter, the same parking lot below, the same kind of early autumn light, and I look at the screen. Mara. I hold the phone for a moment. Claire is in the bedroom. I can hear her on a call of her own, something about a project deadline. The voice calm and specific the way her voice is when she's focused. I pick up. Hey, Nathan. A pause. I know this is. I'm not sure why I'm calling. I almost didn't. But you did. Yeah. Another pause. I heard the rehearsal dinner is this weekend. Saturday. Okay, she's quiet for a moment. I want to say something that I think I should have said a long time ago. And I know the timing is. Mara. Strange, but I don't think I'm going to say it if I wait, and I think not saying it is. Mara. She stops. You don't have to say it, I tell her. I think I do. You don't. I lean against the counter. The parking lot is doing its usual thing. Cars coming and going, a delivery truck, a person with a dog that's interested in the truck. I know what you want to say, and I know you mean it. And I want you to know that it doesn't cost me anything to hear it. I'm not going to break. A long silence. When did you get like this? She says. Like what? Like someone who's already processed everything. A strange, quiet laugh. You used to be. I remember when you were more reachable. I know. What happened? I grew up, I say, which is true in all the ways. I liked you reachable, she says. It comes out simply without strategy. The realest thing she may have ever said to me. I know, I say again. Okay, she breathes. I'm glad you're happy, Nathan. I really am. I'm glad you're happy, too. Another silence. Warmer. You should go, she says. You have a wedding to get ready for. We do. Yeah, the small laugh again. We do. We hang up. I set the phone on the counter and look at it for a moment. Then I go into the bedroom where Claire is finishing her call, and I sit on the edge of the bed and wait. And when she hangs up, she looks at me and says, Who was that? Someone I used to know, I say. A long time ago. She considers this. She does not ask the question she could ask, because she has enough information from my face to understand what she needs to understand, and pushing further would be for her own reassurance rather than mine. This is one of the things about Claire. She is secure enough in what we have to let things be what they are, without requiring them to be smaller. She reaches over and puts her hand over mine. You okay? She says. Yeah, I say. Yeah, she says. We sit there for a moment. The room is quiet. Outside, the city does what cities do in the evening, becomes something softer, something lit from within, something that doesn't ask anything from you. We are married in October in a small ceremony in the Botanical Garden on University Road. 26 people. Lunch reception in the pavilion. String quartet playing things that Joel selected and Claire approved and I nodded along to, because my musical opinion is the least important opinion in this partnership, and I know my role. It rains briefly in the morning. By noon, the sky has the specific washed clarity that follows rain in autumn in the south, everything precise and cool and slightly more itself than it was before. The wedding arbor has orange dahlias. I do not know the name of whoever arranged them. I know the words I say to Claire. I'm not going to reproduce them here. They are between us. I know how she looks when she says hers. I am going to keep that too. Joel gives a toast that is specific and funny, and does not mention the word journey once, which I specifically asked of him. My father dances with my mother, with the careful deliberateness of a man who has learned that the trick to dancing when you're 60 is to stop caring about the technique and start caring about the person in your arms. I watch them for a full minute from across the room and do not apologize for how it makes me feel. At some point in the evening, Joel finds me at the edge of the pavilion, where I'm watching the garden in the late light, and he stands next to me with his drink and says nothing for a while. This is one of Joel's qualities that I have come to value more than almost anything else. He can be quiet with you. He does not fill silences unnecessarily. How does it feel? He says eventually. Like the right thing, I say, which is different from how I expected it to feel. How did you expect it to feel? More dramatic, more definitive, like something had concluded. But it doesn't. It feels like a beginning, I say, which should be obvious, but it isn't actually. It caught me off guard. Joel nods. He looks out at the garden. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were someone who had learned to protect themselves really well. And then I spent a few years with you, and I understood that wasn't quite it. What was it? You weren't protecting yourself. You were saving something, waiting until you were sure it was worth the exposure. I look at him. I think you were right to wait, he says. For what that's worth from a man who took 6 months too long to decide about his own relationship. 6 months isn't that long, I say. No, he says. but the principle. He lifts his glass. To good decisions. To good decisions. We drink. Claire finds me 15 minutes later, takes my hand without a word, and pulls me back toward the music. The conversation with Mara that I think of as the reckoning happens 2 years later. Not by design. We've maintained a professional relationship, cordial, functional, occasionally warm. She left Harmon the year after my wedding for an in-house strategy role at a healthcare company, which put us in different buildings and reduced the incidental contact to occasional industry events. We see each other maybe 3 times a year. It is comfortable in the way that things are comfortable when they've been allowed to settle. She messages me one afternoon, not through a work platform directly, to say she'd like to get coffee if I'm open to it. No urgency, just when you have time. We meet at the same place on Fayetteville Street, where we sat with the dogwood 3 years earlier. I arrive first. I order the coffee I've been ordering since I was 29. She arrives a few minutes late, apologizes briefly, and doesn't seem like someone who has something difficult to say. She seems, as she usually does, like someone who has organized herself around what she's going to do. She orders. She wraps her hands around the mug. I've been in therapy, she says. Okay. For about 2 years. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about patterns. The way I relate to people. What I take from relationships versus what I contribute. She looks down at the mug. My therapist suggested I have some conversations that I've been avoiding. I'm one of them. You're one of them. I wait. I kept you, she says, for a long time. I kept you in a way that was convenient for me. You were always there when I needed something, and I never thought very hard about what that cost you, because I didn't want to think about it. If I thought about it, I'd have to either make a choice or let you go, and neither option was what I wanted. She looks up. I wanted both, she says. I wanted what we had, and I wanted the freedom to look for something else. And you let me have both, and I let you let me. I am quiet. I'm sorry, she says. That's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry for keeping you in a holding pattern that I knew, that I should have known, was not where you wanted to be. The coffee shop around us, the street outside, a woman walking a bike, a man checking his phone. I accept your apology, I say. She blinks. I think she expected more, either more resistance or more relief from me, something proportionate to the weight she's been carrying. I don't have that for her. Not because I'm withholding it, because it genuinely isn't there. That's it, she says. That's it. You're not. She stops. You seem fine. I am fine. You always seem fine, though. That's the thing. I could never tell if you actually were or if you were just. She shakes her head. In the beginning, when we first started working together, I thought you were keeping something from me, that there was a version of you I wasn't getting access to. And then I figured out that the version I was getting was actually whole, that you weren't keeping anything, that you were just not going to come toward me unless I created the conditions. And you didn't create the conditions, I say. Not when it would have mattered. She looks at me steadily. Were you ever? In the beginning when we were working together, were you ever? Yes, I say. She holds that. I thought so, she says. I'm sorry, Nathan. I know you are. I kept waiting for you to push, she says. I kept thinking someone who feels the things you feel, they push eventually. They can't help it. And you never did. You just withdrew. And I thought maybe I was wrong about what I felt. And then I spent the next couple of years wishing you'd pushed, which was completely unfair of me. It was, I say gently. She laughs a little. It's not the real laugh. It's the other one, the self-deprecating one. Yeah, but I understand it. She looks at me again, the careful trying to find the door look. Are you happy, she says. Yeah, no pause. Are you? She considers it. It's a real consideration. She doesn't give the automatic answer. I'm getting there, she says. I think I'm learning what happy actually requires from me. It turns out it requires more than I was giving. That's usually how it works. Yes, she wraps her hands tighter around the mug. I'm glad you didn't wait for me. This catches me slightly. Not because it's unexpected. I know her well enough to hear it coming, but because of how simply she says it. No performance. Just, I'm glad you didn't wait. I'm glad too, I say. We sit for a while. The street does its Saturday morning thing. A couple goes by with a stroller. The dogwood on the corner is just past peak. but there are still a few clusters of pink in it, holding on. Thank you for meeting me, she says. Thank you for calling. She stands. I stand with her. She looks at me for a moment with an expression I'm not going to try to name. It is specific to this moment and probably to who we are to each other, which is something I don't have a word for. People who could have been something and weren't, who met too early or too late or in a configuration that was never going to work, who are both the better for it in ways neither of them will fully account. She reaches out and puts her hand briefly on my arm. Take care of yourself, she says. You too. She goes. I sit back down. Order another coffee. Watch the street for a few minutes. The thing I feel, I want to be precise about this because it is the most important observation I have made in this second version of my life, and I want to get it right. The thing I feel is not closure. That is not the word. Closure implies a door, and doors imply rooms, and the room I lived in with Mara is gone. It has been gone for years. What there is instead is the recognition of absence. Not painful. Not even sad, exactly. The way you feel when you realize you haven't thought about something in a long time. When you can name the space without needing to fill it. The first version of Nathan Calloway, the one who died on a Saturday night in September after attending someone else's wedding, he needed this conversation. He needed it badly. He spent 7 years earning the right to hear what she said today, and he never got it. I got it. And I feel quiet. Not grateful, not vindicated. Quiet. The way a room feels after the last person has left, and you stand in it for a moment before you also leave. I drink my coffee. Then I go home. 5 years. I will try to say this clearly. My daughter was born in March. Her name is Cecily, and she came into the world on a Tuesday at 6:47 in the morning with a ferocity that the nurses described as she's ready, and her mother described, from the perspective of someone who had been in labor for 11 hours, as of course she is, she's mine. She has my nose and Claire's stubbornness, and a laugh that arrived early and surprises everyone who first hears it. She is 4 now. She has opinions about everything. She has strong feelings about the color of cups, and whether a book was read in the right order, and whether the cereal goes in before the milk or after, and she is correct on 2 of these 3 points. Milk first. I'm not budging on the book order, and I am not going to tell her which is which. I work from home on Fridays. On Friday mornings, while Claire is at the office, Cecily and I have a standing date at the kitchen table that involves crayons and construction paper and whatever she's currently obsessed with. For a while it was birds, specifically blue jays, which she can now describe in detail that would embarrass most adults. Recently, it's been whatever animal we saw on the last trip to the Nature Museum. Last Friday, she drew 12 pictures of an alligator's jaw structure from memory. 12 pictures. All from memory. I keep them all. The agency is mine now. Not all of it. Joel has a third. Marcus is still a silent partner with an equity stake that he insisted on maintaining when he retired 3 years ago, because he said the industry would try to take it apart without his name on the door, and I said they can try, and he laughed and signed the papers. But it is mine in the way that matters, which is the way where the decisions are mine to make and mine to live with. We are 42 people now. We were 17 when I made partner. The accounts we carry would have seemed, to the version of me who attended that kickoff event 12 years ago, like the kind of numbers you get to eventually. I have stopped thinking about what would have been eventually and started thinking about what is now. What is now is this: a firm that does good work and knows why it does it. A team that I would hire again, which is not as common a statement as it should be. Clients who renew not because switching is difficult, but because the work is better than what they'd get elsewhere. A creative culture that Joel and I have spent a decade building, and that survives our bad weeks and bad quarters, and one very public account loss 3 years ago, that we turned into a culture-defining conversation about the kind of work we'd refuse to do. I did not plan any of this in my first life. I was too busy being available. Joel has 2 kids now, a boy and a girl, 5 and 2. His wife is the woman he almost let go of the second year we were friends, the one he finally committed to after 6 months of not deciding. They came to Cecily's 3rd birthday party, and his daughter and Cecily were in the backyard for 3 straight hours doing something with a hose that neither of them could explain afterwards, and both of them considered the best afternoon they'd had. His son sat on the porch with a look of profound philosophical disappointment and ate approximately 40 crackers. Joel and I still go to the bar on Wednesdays. Less regularly now, kids and schedules, but when we go properly. The Negronis are still definitive. Claire and I have a system. It is not a formal system. It developed over years without either of us naming it, which is how the best systems work. It goes like this. When something is wrong, we say so. We don't say it in the heated way, not usually, and we don't leave it to accumulate. We say it the evening it happens, or the next morning at the latest, and we stay with the conversation until it's done. Not until one of us wins, until it's actually done. This sounds simple. It is not simple. It requires, specifically, the ability to say a true thing to a person you love without worrying that the true thing will damage what you have, and the ability to hear a true thing from a person you love without treating it as an attack. Both of these things took us years to get good at, and we are still not perfect, and there are weeks where we are both tired and the system degrades. But we come back to it, always. We chose to be in the habit of coming back to it, which is a different and more durable thing than being in the habit of having good weeks. In the first version of my life, I had no practice at this. I had practice at the opposite, at receiving less than I needed and deciding it was enough, at calibrating my expectations downward to fit the available supply. By the time I might have needed the other skill, the one where you say the true thing clearly and wait, I didn't have it. I have it now. There is a particular hour of night, 2 a.m., roughly, which parents will recognize, when you're awake for no structural reason, and the house is quiet in the specific way that houses get when everyone in them is asleep, and you sit in the kitchen or the living room or just in the dark of the bedroom with your eyes open and you think. I have these hours sometimes. I don't fight them. I sit in them and I think about the first life. Not in grief, not anymore. In something more like acknowledgement. I think about the person I was, the patience I had and what I spent it on, the phone calls I answered, the silences I filled, the 7 years of building someone a life and living on the outside of it. I think about the version of me that died on a negative 85 on a Saturday night in September, still hoping. And this is the thing that costs me most every time I go back to it, still hoping that waking up tomorrow would be different. Still believing, with the stubborn animal loyalty of someone who has confused hope with devotion, that the next time Mara called it would be because she finally meant it in the way that he needed her to mean it. He never stopped hoping, right up to the end. I feel for him, that person. I feel for him the way you feel for someone you knew in another city, in another part of your life, with real tenderness and appropriate distance, and the specific sadness of someone who knows how the story ends. He was a good man. He just gave himself to the wrong investment. I look in on Cecily when I have these nights. I don't wake her. That would be a catastrophic miscalculation. I just stand in the doorway for a minute. She sleeps the way she does everything, which is completely. She is fully committed to being asleep. Her stuffed rabbit is pinned under her arm at an angle that seems uncomfortable but clearly isn't. Her face in sleep is, I don't have the words for it. It is just her face. Already entirely hers. Already at 4 years old, containing the future person she's going to become, which is someone I will not be able to predict and will not be able to control and will spend the rest of my life watching arrive. I feel standing in that doorway at 2 a.m. correctly placed. This is the phrase I keep arriving at. Not happy, because happy is a temperature that rises and falls and is not the right measure. Not grateful, because gratitude implies luck, and luck is only part of this. Correctly placed is closer. I am where I am because of choices that were genuinely mine. The withdrawal, the work, the risk of choosing Claire without a guarantee, the patient, ongoing decision to be the kind of person who says the true thing rather than the comfortable one. I am correctly placed. And in the place that is mine, there is this room, and this child asleep in it, and a woman down the hall who will ask me in the morning, without any particular urgency, what I was up to at 2 a.m., and will listen to the answer because she is interested in the actual contents of my life, and not just its surface. And there is a firm of 42 people who make things I am proud of. And there is Joel, and my parents in Greensboro, and a Wednesday night bar that still makes a definitive Negroni. This is what I have. I hold it the way you hold something that is both ordinary and unrepeatable. The weight of it is just right. Not too heavy, not too light. A life that fits the person who lives it, which is rarer than it sounds, and harder than it looks, and not something you arrive at by waiting for the right circumstances to give it to you. You have to build it, and then you have to choose it, and then you have to choose it again. That is the only mechanism. There is no other one. My phone is on the nightstand when I go back to bed. Claire doesn't stir. The room is dark and still, and somewhere outside a car passes on the street with its music up, one of those late-night drives that belongs entirely to whoever is in it. I lie down. I put my hand near Claire's hand, not touching, just near. She shifts slightly, and her hand finds mine in the dark, the way it always does, without looking on the first try. I close my eyes. The last thing I see before sleep is not a scene or an image. It is a number, 7 years. The weight of 7 years, which I know now, is neither regret nor scar tissue. It is simply the price of the lesson which I paid in the first life, which I do not have to pay again. It was expensive. It was worth it. I am not sure the word for what that is. But I am not sorry. And I am not afraid. And I am here in this room, in this life, with this specific hand in mine in the dark. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything.